Welcome to part 28 of the Basic Training Booster Pass Edition. Today we're going to cover everything you need to know to play Yoshi's Island on 150cc. The recommended build for this course is going to be Daisy, Teddy Buggy, Rollers, and Paper Glider. Do note that Yoshi, Peach, and Birdo are all the same as Daisy, so you can use them too. This is a pretty straightforward course for the most part. The first set of turns are taken pretty much exactly how your brain is telling you to take them. And when you approach this wooden trick ramp, you want to do a left hop into a right drift such that you land on top of the ramp. This will allow you to build up a super mini turbo in midair, but don't tighten up until you go all the way off the ramp so that you can still take a good line. Release the super mini turbo just before you land so that you can land in a left drift to go into the little tunnel section here. An alternative strategy is to just trick off the wooden ramp and then trick off the side of this little geyser, but the problem is that 1, it's slower, and 2, it can be pretty annoying to try and position this out when the geyser is actually going, so I don't really recommend going for this unless you're having a really hard time with the counter hop strats that we just went over. When going into the tunnel section, do a super mini turbo and then do a wide left drift to build up a mini turbo before doing another wide right drift to grab the 3 coins. Then we're on to the mushroom shortcut. This is one of the weirder mushroom cuts in the game in that you have to take it in a way that's very counterintuitive. The basic story is that the actual amount of off-road is way too much for you to mushroom through the whole thing, so you'll notice that I intentionally hold wide for quite a bit and then I take a super tight line through the cut while using the mushroom. Then just widen up a little bit through the cut itself before coming out of the off-road. This setup should allow you to build up an ultra mini turbo before going off the glider ramp. You'll notice that I don't trick here. I've talked about this in other videos, but basically the problem is that if you're in the middle of an ultra mini turbo, tricking off a glider ramp eats the rest of your boost before giving you the trick boost. The difference between this and tricking is pretty negligible, so it doesn't really matter all that much. But do try and make sure to grab one more coin before preparing for one of the most ridiculous cycle-based things in the entire game. The infamous Yoshi's Island question mark box. Let's just take a minute to analyze the stupidity of this thing. It starts at its lowest point on the very left and then moves to the right while going up and down, hitting its peak twice before getting to its farthest point on the right. It then reverses direction and moves from right to left, once again hitting its peak twice before getting back to its starting point. Unfortunately, as you can see from the lines I've drawn on screen here, the peaks and troughs in the left to right section do not match up with the peaks and troughs in the right to left section, so telling you exactly how to get this every time is basically not possible. Here's a couple things to keep in mind though. From the start of one peak, it takes a little over 2.5 seconds to get to the next peak, and from the glider, it takes about 2 seconds to get to the box. So the basic story is that if the box is already high when you go off the glider, you're going to have to aim fairly high to hit it. If it's already low when you go off the glider, then you're going to have to aim fairly low. The problem is that every time it's at its peak, it's literally impossible to hit. And when I say literally, I do mean literally, as in you can know exactly where it's going to be, do everything in your power to try and position yourself correctly, and there's still about a 0.4 second window where it's just not possible to get it. Fortunately, I found that this is mostly a problem on lap 1, and if you're able to hit the cycle there, then it's likely that you'll be able to get it on laps 2 and 3 as well. Now look, real talk, I could try and offer you advice on how to hit this damn thing all day, but honestly the only way to learn is just to play the track over and over again to get a feel for how this thing moves around. And by the way, I probably should have mentioned this a minute and a half ago, but the entire reason we want to hit the box is that it opens up this insane shortcut that takes you not only through the off-road, but over a part of the gigantic rock as well. This shortcut saves so much time that it's actually slower to skip the box and take the off-road cut below, even if you use 2 mushrooms to get through it. So yeah, learn this box, because if you miss it, run's over. Fortunately, laps 2 and 3 are basically the same as lap 1, so let's talk about the world record for a bit. The differences all basically come down to the glider ramps. They do vectoring off both of them, and as you'll see in my full personal best, it's possible to do this with normal glider vectoring, but it is not at all something I would recommend that you try and learn until you can basically hit the box whenever you want, because there is no reaction time at play here. You just have to learn the cycle to get this properly. Anyways, that's it for the strats. Let's talk about the track a bit more while checking out my current personal best. And as always, if you found the video helpful so far, please don't forget to drop a like and a comment so that it can get spread to more people. Thank you very much for that, I really do appreciate it. Now, Yoshi's Island. This is definitely one of the weirder tracks for me to rank. Let's just get the obvious negative out of the way first. I genuinely think that the question mark box might be one of the worst designed things in the game. There's a lot of cycle-based tracks like Ribbon Road or Bowser's Castle where pace lock can be a significant issue, but usually it's only once you start getting really good at the track. And even then, it feels kind of unintentional. Like, let's have this gigantic lava Bowser pound the ground to make waves that you can trick off of, because that'd be pretty cool, right? But whoops, what do you know? It turns out that there's certain patterns of waves that just allow you to save a few tenths of a second here and there. But the Yoshi's Island question mark box is a different brand of hell entirely. Not because it's difficult to hit, although it definitely is, but because missing the cycle costs you 2 seconds per lap, and it was intentionally designed to be impossible to hit 15% of the time. But, like I said before, even though I have an intense dislike of the way this thing was designed, I've only ever really found this to be an issue on lap 1, and even then, it's at the very least consistent, so the better you get at the track, the less of an issue it becomes. And honestly, from a racing online standpoint, the question mark box is part of what makes this track so much fun to pick. I know that I just spent a bunch of time whining about it, but when it comes to playing in worldwides, it actually makes things very interesting because you really have to stop and think about whether or not you want to try and go for the box. If you're in first, it's usually going to be the go-to play because if you don't open it up and the people behind you do, it's free time save for them. But if you're not in first, do you really want to open up the shortcut for the people in front of you? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but the point is that this thing opens up a ton of options for making strategic plays, especially when you're in competitive formats like 6v6. And I guarantee you the teams that know how to play this track well are going to have a huge advantage over teams that don't. But aside from that, it also just feels like there was a lot of love put into it. From the drum beats at the start of the race to the Yoshi coin sound effects to the victory fanfare at the end, it just feels like Nintendo really went out of its way to make this one of the tracks that has the most personality out of anything we've gotten so far in the DLC. And if nothing else, that's definitely got to count for something, right? And that's everything you need to know to play Yoshi's Island on 150cc. A very weird course to be sure, but hopefully you all found this tutorial helpful, and don't forget to subscribe if you did. Thank you all very much for taking the time out of your day to do some basic training, and as always, I will see you in the next video.